समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Just when you thought that things were possibly getting better between the Trump administration and India, comes another provocation that most people will see as an anti-India move. A new visa regime that basically slaps on $100,000 fee to apply for an H-1B visa. Remember, Indians make up roughly 70% of all H-1B visas that were granted in the last fiscal year. This impacted 200,000 Indian professionals. That's how many of them got H-1B visas in 2024. The number was only slightly smaller in 2023, with 191,000 Indians getting H-1B visas. How do we understand what's happening between India and the United States of America? We'll be talking to a leading strategic affairs analyst in just a moment. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo story. On the program today, we will be looking at the fallout of Trump's latest move. Some might say it is not against India. It's about those who want to go and work in India. But you know what? It actually impacts 200,000, at least if you go by the last count, of Indian professionals who look to work in the United States of America. H-1B visas are a part and parcel of what's often been called the American dream. But is this dream over, or is it being at least reimagined by Donald Trump? Trump had picked up the phone and dialed Prime Minister Modi on his birthday. Trade talks have resumed between both countries amid the tariff war. Many believe that the worst might be over for India and the United States of America, even as the future of what would happen to the tariffs seemed unclear. But it's been a cataclysmic week for geopolitics. On the one hand, what seemed like a thaw. On the other hand, a military pact announced between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia that also has all manners of possible implications for India's security interests. And now comes Trump's own H-bomb, the new visa regime. How do we understand what's happening? To help us go through this, let me welcome our newsmaker to the program today. Derek Grossman is with us. He's a professor at the University of Southern California and studies geopolitics very, very closely. Derek, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Before we get started, just want to play out a clip of Trump and Howard Lutnick announcing this new visa regime. Take a look.
Thank you, Mr. President. One of the most abused visa systems in our current immigration system has been the H-1B non-immigrant visa program. This is supposed to allow highly skilled laborers who work in fields that Americans don't work in to come into the United States of America. What this proclamation will do is raise the fee that companies pay to sponsor H-1B applicants to $100,000. This will ensure that the people they're bringing in are actually very highly skilled and that they're not replaceable by American workers. So it'll protect American workers, but ensure that companies have a pathway to hire truly extraordinary people and bring them to the United States to work.
We need workers. We need workers. We need great workers. And this pretty much ensures that that's what's going to happen. I think, Sean, do you agree with that?
Well, they're $100,000 per year. So the whole idea is no more will these big tech companies or other big companies train foreign workers. They have to pay the government $100,000, then they have to pay the employee. So it's just not economic. If you're going to train somebody, you're going to train one of the recent graduates from one of the great universities across our land. Train Americans, stop bringing in people to take our jobs. That's the policy here, $100,000 a year for H-1B visas, and all of the big companies are on board. We've spoken to them about the gold card.
They love it. They love it. They really love it. They need it.
Has been the H-1B non-immigrant visa program. This is supposed to allow highly skilled labor.
Can we come out of that? Yeah. So you get the general idea there. Derek, the fact is that while this is, of course, going to hit software companies, Indian technology companies like Infosys, TCS, and HCL America, actually, if you look at the data between April and September, the largest number of H-1B visas were issued or were used by Amazon. That's actually what the data tells you. I want first the larger picture. I saw your comment on X. You very clearly see this as an anti-India move. What's actually going on here?
Again,
Sorry,
Barkha.
Derek. Yeah, start again. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me, Barkha, and it's good to be with you again. And yeah, I mean, so what the Trump administration is saying it's trying to do here is to free up more jobs for American workers. And it may, in fact, be trying to do that. But on the other hand, it is going to impact, as you said, a very large number of Indian workers, 200,000 plus. About 70% of foreigners who get H-1B visas are Indians. And so this is going to be highly problematic for the U.S.-India relationship. And it comes right at a time when Trump and Modi have exchanged pleasantries and look like they're in the mood to forge some sort of deal on trade, and then also to more broadly reset the bilateral relationship. And it's just unclear the whole timing in this, right? I mean, why do this now, right, when you know that it's going to impact the India relationship? And the only thing that I can think of, well, I guess 2 points. One is Trump doesn't care about the India relationship all that much, and also cares deeply about what he campaigned on, which is freeing up jobs for American workers. And so, this maybe isn't, I guess, we obviously talk a lot about India here, right? But India doesn't seem to be the priority in the president's mindset. And you also, you played the clip with Trump Gold Card is here, right? So that, we didn't talk about that part, but that's $1 million, right?
Yeah.
To buy that, right? And to have access to the United States. And so Trump is very much of the mindset that he only wants really kind of rich and very talented people in this country, which I think runs completely against the grain of the United States traditionally, which is to take in, huddled masses, right? Give me everyone, you're poor, you're rich, and everyone in between.
Yeah. So there are a lot of questions about whether this will pass muster legally, whether it will go through Congress. But putting all of those aside for now, I think what's more curious is to understand what you spoke of. Does Trump really care about India? Is Trump confused about India? Does he think this is not a big deal? Or has he done this knowing that it is further going to rile up India? That's the part that's never been clear. Trump has actually personally only praised Narendra Modi. He picked up the phone and called the prime minister on his birthday. The birthday provided a context for it to not seem like Trump was backpedaling on anything. But what's actually going on here? Is this confusion or is this hostility?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of two ways to look at this. The Art of the Deal, right? We always talk about his book. I've never personally read it, right? But, most people haven't read it, I guess, but they know about it. They know what it says, right? And Trump likes to kind of go in high, right? So that eventually when an agreement is reached, it's something that is higher than what would have been expected, right? And I think, so from this perspective, doing the H-1B visa thing right now kind of puts him in the position of maybe negotiating something with Modi later down the road, right? So that, so maybe it's not $100,000 for Indians, right? Maybe it's, there's a carve out, there's an exception to the rule, right? Second point I would raise here is that, that's sort of like the more positive way to look at it, that there's this strategy, right? He's thinking about this and timing it in some way. Yeah. But I think the second point I want to raise, and the more likely possibility here, is that there is just mass confusion. I mean, the process within the White House, at the National Security Council in particular, that runs the interagency process between the State Department and the Department of Defense, now called the Department of War, as well as other agencies and departments across the federal government, is really not coordinating like it used to. And that means that things that are happening in one agency, in this case, or I guess department, in the case of the Department of Commerce, with Secretary of Commerce Lutnick there, right, may not have actually been coordinated with the State Department, right? What kind of impact is this going to have on the U.S.-India diplomatic reset? Have we fully considered that? So, it's been widely reported on that Trump likes to make decisions in a top-down manner, and that runs against the grain of how things have traditionally been done, which is the president, whoever it is, kind of gives some general guidance, and then it's up to the interagency from the bottom up to come up with different talking points and decision points, and then the president makes a decision thereafter. Trump is basically saying, I don't want that anymore. I want to make the decision, and then the NSC and the interagency, you just be the implementers of it, right?
Yeah.
So I think the process is very much different than it used to be, and I think uncoordinated. So my view is it's probably more the latter than the former.
So, on X, you said so much for the India-US reset. Would it be fair to say that you are skeptical that anything has been reset?
Well, nothing has been reset as of right now. Just because Modi and Trump exchanged pleasantries and Trump wished him happy birthday along with pretty much every other leader in the world, right? That was pretty remarkable. That does not a reset make, right? We really need to have both leaders meet, whether it's at the upcoming Quad Summit in New Delhi, or if it's on the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit here in Malaysia, where I am right now. I mean, there's got to be a meeting between them to actually begin the healing process. But to be honest with you, I think a lot of the damage that's been done may be irreversible for the foreseeable future, because as far as I know, and you can tell me your thoughts, I mean, the average Indian is outraged by the way the United States has handled itself over the last few months, whether it's on trade, whether it's on, Trump saying he brokered a ceasefire between India and Pakistan, or, meeting up with the Pakistani field marshal behind closed doors for 2 hours, no readout of that. I mean, and then inviting him to the U.S. again, right? And again, apparently there's going to be a third meeting at the UN General Assembly next week. This is, Indians have a good reason to be outraged. And so I don't think the healing is going to come too swiftly and is going to necessarily be effective in the short to medium term.
I absolutely agree, because I think trust is broken. And I think India is, at a governmental diplomatic level, not going to be able to play this in the same way again. The kind of investment of political capital, emotional capital, if you will, almost a lean towards America. India's sort of philosophical beliefs would never allow it to be an ally of any country in the world. But definitely there was a tilt towards the United States of America. And I think that tilt is going to come back to at very least the center. What I want to ask you is this. You mentioned Pakistan, and I keep saying Americans in Trump's administration, even sections of media, don't get that for Indians, this has been about sovereignty. That when you come and wag your finger at us and tell us you can buy oil from here, you can't buy oil from there. If you do this, we'll punish you in this way. It's not so much about trade, but it's about sovereignty. It's about self-respect. It's about a country that has a colonial history, that has had to fight the British to be independent, and is very, very self-respecting and proud in that way across governments. So this is not specific to the Modi government. I think this is just hardwired into Indians and how we look at this. So I think you hit the nail on the head when you say that Indians are outraged. I want you to talk about Pakistan. What's going on with Trump's new love fest with Pakistan? Is it the cryptocurrency business deals? Is it the fact that Pakistan flattered him? Is this, again, the art of the deal, where you maybe almost deliberately rile up India by doing this? What's going on?
Yeah, it's hard to know, right? It's pretty murky, but what it seems like it's a combination of cryptocurrency as well as them flattering him on the ceasefire. But also, I think you can't lose sight of what Trump has actually posted on social media about, which is Pakistan's alleged critical mineral reserves. Now, I don't know of much critical minerals there. Maybe I'm missing something, right? But he seems to be pretty bullish on the idea that Pakistan would serve as, some sort of way to get at critical minerals, especially in this broader competition against China, right? China has used critical minerals now as a weapon against the United States by restricting critical minerals, especially for military and defense-related projects in the United States, right? And so maybe he sees that as a way to, as a strategic advantage for the U.S. Over the long run. But like I said, I think a lot of times Trump is kind of making it up as he goes along, and he is somebody who is very much happy. He's happier. He's in a better mood when he's being flattered, when somebody's nominating him for the Nobel Peace Prize, when someone is enriching him and his family and the Trump organization, which I think Pakistan is very much enthusiastic to continue doing. And so I would say that it's mostly the latter.
You know, talking about Pakistan, Pakistan signed up a NATO-style alliance, a defense pact with the Saudis just a couple of days ago. And the reason it's being called NATO-style is because NATO, as you know, but our audience may not, has an Article 5 that basically says an armed attack on one country is an armed attack on the entire alliance. And this particular deal between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia has a similar clause. Now, there is confusion about this. Most people see this as a signal not just to Israel, but also to the United States of America, that after Israel was able to bomb Qatar, or targets in Qatar rather, it means the Americans are no longer willing to be the shield. And therefore, Arab countries are thinking about other ways to protect themselves. But in India, there's real concern about whether this emboldens Pakistan further. You have people like Hussein Haqqani, who's been Pakistan's ambassador to the US, saying, hey, this gives Pakistan a chance to buy US weapons using Saudi funds. How do you see it?
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that last part, because that, I think Pakistan would be pretty cautious because they already have a pretty good thing going with the US, as we just discussed. But I do think that this recent defense pact is really, to be honest, was pretty predictable because it's a match made in heaven for those two countries, really a match made in hell for India, for Israel, for the United States, right? I mean, just consider what does Saudi Arabia want, right? They want an added deterrent because they don't know what Israel is going to do in the future. They don't know what Iran is going to do in the future. Right. And with both of those countries, Israel having as an undeclared nuclear state and Iran likely going to rush now toward a bomb after being bombed by the U.S. back in June and by Israel. Right. You would imagine. Right. And it's very much in their interest to have some sort of ace in the hole. And that could be Pakistan's nuclear arsenal, access to that. For Pakistan, the interests are clear. Right. Symbolic mostly, to show India that if you were to resume Operation Sindoor against us, that could potentially bring the Saudis in. Now, I saw the interview you did, I think it was a couple of days ago now, on this topic, and I think the speakers were absolutely correct that it's hard to imagine a scenario in which the Pakistanis could actually bring Saudi Arabian troops or military assistance into a fight against India, because India has so many common interests with Saudi Arabia. The relationship has been quite good. And then also you have to consider, the U.S. angle in this. Now the U.S. would have Saudi Arabia as a U.S. ally potentially fighting against against India, who is a close strategic partner of the United States. I just feel like that is something that's very difficult to imagine, although never say never on these things, because kind of in the much broader strokes, right, of geopolitics. I'm no Sam Huntington fan, okay, but Huntington, if you know anything about him, the clash of
the clash of civilizations,
he's much maligned over the years. He passed away a number of years ago, right? But his view has been much maligned. But I have to say, it's kind of making a comeback these days, right? Because there is this general sense that everybody is sort of aligning into their civilizational, their cultural corners of the world, right? And kind of feeling more comfortable in those corners. And so Pakistan, as part of the broader Muslim world, is much more comfortable with Saudi Arabia and vice versa than either of those two would ever be, with India or with the West, right? Or even with China, for that matter, right? So I am concerned about that we may see the revenge of Huntington in the coming months
Well,
and years.
at least at the very least in rhetoric, Pakistan is calling for other Muslim countries to rally together, and hence the sort of, the phrase Islamic NATO. And so they're putting a religious identity on it. And therefore, that is a sort of vindication of the Huntington type argument. Whether it's actually going to happen or not, we don't know. I think India is concerned, but Indian diplomats, as you mentioned, that I've been interviewing, just do not believe the Saudis will burn their bridges with India. But we have to watch this space. We literally don't know how it's going to evolve. I want to ask you how the Americans might be looking at it, because there's talk about a nuclear umbrella. Pakistan's a nuclear armed state. There's talk about how this pact throws a nuclear umbrella over the Middle East, over the sort of the Arab world. How might America be looking at this? And could this have happened without the Americans being on board? I mean, the Americans won't like it, but they must have a view.
Well, I'm sure that folks in the administration are saying that Saudi Arabia has already fallen under the nuclear umbrella technically, and it's the American nuclear umbrella. So now
Correct.
They just have another nuclear umbrella, and ties with Pakistan are getting better, though I think maybe they would be a bit worried that Pakistan is moving too quickly, right? And that it could actually cause more damage in the Middle East than it's worth. And then, of course, signaling to India, right, and causing more damage in that dynamic. So I can't imagine that they're too pleased about it, though I will say this, that they probably care less than past administrations. I think if this were the Biden administration, they would be, or even the first Trump administration or any administration prior, they'd be pretty concerned that Pakistan is kind of meddling in the Middle East now, right? And potentially causing more trouble for Israel, right? Potentially causing Iran to think more about getting its own nuclear weapon, right? I think the Trump people are of the general opinion. We're going to see this national defense strategy or national war strategy come out pretty soon. So we'll get some more insight on it. But I think they're of the general opinion that doing less is more. And if others do more, so long as it doesn't really directly impact the American people, then that's okay. Right. And I think this could be one of those situations where, think about it from a MAGA lens. Does this really impact the American people that Pakistan and Saudi Arabia now have a defense pact? If you put it through that lens, the answer is typically no, right? Or very little. It impacts India a lot potentially, right? But it doesn't. It's the same thing with the H-1B visas, right? It's like, does it impact the American people? Actually, it helps the American people what Trump's doing, right? Does it? And it's sort of like a disregard for the fact that it hurts other people that have actually, in this case, Indians who have actually enriched our country, right? And that, I think, is my general problem with the Trump administration's approach.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, Indian Americans today lead most of, or not most, but a number of the major technology companies, right? So whether it's a Sundar Pichai at Google or a Satya Nadella at Microsoft, and I could go on. But, before we end, let's talk about China. When you talk about this new sort of security doctrine, and we're all waiting to see what it's going to say. Is it really going to, focus on the Northern Hemisphere as some are anticipating? Is it going to give up its focus on China? We know that Trump and Xi Jinping spoke. There's a chance that they'll meet soon. What's going on there? In the beginning, China was spared the rhetoric of the tariffs. China had choke points because of rare earth sort of minerals and material that Americans just didn't take on China. But now they seem to be rhetorically wanting to take on China. What's going on?
Yeah, I think Trump he certainly wants a reset with China in the form of a summit with Xi Jinping, right? So we have noticed in the last few months a cooling off of the rhetoric, right? We've also seen Trump do more vis-a-vis Taiwan, right? We just saw a report in the last day or so that Trump decided over the summer to either cancel or postpone a $400 million arms sale to Taiwan, also canceling the transit via the United States of Taiwan's president, Lai Ching-te. So these are the types of things that Beijing really appreciates and kind of sets a very positive mood for a potential summit between the two leaders. But on the other hand, I don't think the administration's completely abandoned great power competition at all. In fact, the national defense strategy is going to still talk about competition against China. It may be slightly downgraded to Western hemispheric defense. We'll see, right? But I think the way Trump is viewing it is that anything China is doing in the Western hemisphere, such as in Greenland or around Greenland, or trying to do something in the Panama Canal that's against our interests or something like that, that's kind of how he prefers to think about great power competition. He really has a spheres of influence approach. So long as, again, going back to Huntington, as long as we sort of stay in our corner of the earth, China stays in its corner, everybody else stays in their corner, then it should be fine. The problem with that is that's not reality. We live in a globalized society. We live in a highly interconnected society, right? And what happens vis-a-vis China, God forbid, attacking Taiwan, for example, that's going to impact us, whether we want to admit it or not. So there has to be this, I think, bigger view of the world, right? Trump would label it as a globalist view, and that's something to be sort of criticized and shunned, right? But I think that he's wrong in that sense. And I just kind of wonder how the national defense strategy is going to characterize it. I think it's going to be what I said, which is China and Russia, still great power competition is important, but really it's only important in our hemisphere, less in their influence.
So let's end where we started, the new visa regime, India, US. You said that, at the moment there is no reset. The leaders, Modi and Trump, have to meet in person, and maybe that call at least paved the way for that possibility. Now, my question to you is, where do you see this relationship going, given the mass confusion, as you called it, in the Trump administration?
So I do think that Trump and Modi are going to meet at some point, whether it is on the sidelines of the summit, the ASEAN summit, or in New Delhi. I mean, there will be a meeting. And I think that that's going to go a long way because Trump is highly personalistic. We all know this, right? And Modi is very patient. I mean, in fact, we've seen a lot of Trump criticism of India, and Modi has really just been approached it cautiously. And so is the Ministry of External Affairs in their statements, right? And I think that's kudos to New Delhi, to be like more mature, to be the adult in the relationship, frankly, right? So yeah. I think part one will be getting this trade deal. My understanding is the trade deal is basically finalized, and it just needs the two men to sit down and sign it, right? Yeah. And then that, I think, will set the stage for another, series of negotiations on other issues of concern that'll come up probably in next year. And so, we'll just kind of have to see where that goes. There was a lot made of Modi going to China, right, and meeting with Xi and Putin. But frankly, I didn't read too much into it. I mean, it was a multilateral forum. It was the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It just so happened to be in Tianjin, much to China's strategic advantage and symbolic advantage. Is it true that Modi didn't have to attend? Sure, right? But I think there was a little added, let's show Trump that we have other options. So I am going to attend, right? But that's okay, because India's already, has a longstanding record of being non-aligned or multi-aligned, right? It is a member of SCO. It has a very close relationship with Russia. It's already, since October, been resetting its relationship with China, predates Trump in office. So I think there's a lot of plausible cover for this being solely about Trump.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a very, very interesting time to be reporting on geopolitics and to be living through this moment. Whatever is happening, I do think a new world order is taking shape. I don't know what the look and feel of it, where this will land eventually, but there's a massive global churn, and there are both opportunities as well as sort of wreckage to be found when this is all over. But right now, we're literally living through the middle of it. Thank you, Derek. Learned a lot from you and look forward to having you back with us soon. Take care. Derek Grossman, professor at the University of Southern California. Have a great day.
Thank you, Barkha. Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.